This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Jalil, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are rocking and rolling, doing it 0 to 100 real quick. We'll talk a little bit more about that stuff, but man, we got some really great stuff happening right now in the league. And you know, in order to break this stuff down, I got to do it with my right-hand man, 50 grand, NBA aficionado, Diamond contributor, writer for one of the illest websites, www.shawsports.net, the big kahuna, my PNC, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. What's going on, my brother?
Salute to all the fans listeners of The Baseline out there. I know it's a great week in the NBA, lots of controversy out there, lots of things to discuss as always, and we're here to bring it to you live. Now the special guest to talk about, one of the teams that we're a little surprised to see them struggling, man. But as always, man, I'll let you go ahead and do those honors.
Oh, man, I appreciate it, man. I think I need a PA announcer for me to do the PA announcing about what's going on with that show. I love it. Listen, to all the fans and listeners, man, we appreciate everyone, and I hope you had a great turkey holidays. And obviously, with all of that being said, you're stuffed and you're watching plenty of basketball if you weren't watching plenty of college football as well, too. So with that being said, great show this week. We got our man, Ben Mehic, who's going to be jumping on in a few moments. He writes for and keeps his finger on the pulse of the Washington Wizards. He writes for an excellent site called Wiz of Awes. They're Fansided, Sports Illustrated blog. These guys do excellent work, critically acclaimed. So we cannot wait to have him on to talk about the state of affairs happening with the Washington Wizards. Also in this week's show, we're going to talk about the situation that happened out in Philly. Superstar player kind of spazzing out, man. We're going to talk about why this is not just on the player, but could also be on the culture and what may need to be done in order to offset that situation. We'll also talk about some surprising league statistics that are happening out in the game in our segment of The Drop. Some players out there surprisingly filling up the stat sheets in places that we weren't expecting. And also we'll talk about can't teach an old dog new tricks. They don't know about our boy Dirk Nowitzki. What is he doing to help revitalize not only his game for this year, but also the play of the Dallas Mavericks? All that in our coveted Coast to Coast with so much to talk about with the topics happening in the association. We appreciate everyone continually listening to The Baseline. You know how to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. We always encourage you, though, to get at the show's Twitter handle at NBA_The Baseline. Hashtag up The Baseline. Let us know who you are and what you're about. Available on all the major platforms. Available on Stitcher, Microsoft TuneIn, iTunes, and Player FM. So download any one of those platforms and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things in the NBA. You know how we do. And you know how we like to set things off. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Jalil, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And this week with us, we have a great guest. He covers everything that's happening with a Washington Wizards team that suddenly, maybe a year ago, we would have questioned somewhat of the slow start, but we understand the talent that's on this team, what John Wall brings to the table. But this year, as we now start nearing to the quarter mark, there is reason for concern, because now this starts to become a trend, and you just start wondering whether or not this team has the tools to put together this championship run that everyone is anticipating for a team that's out of the Southeast Division. We got our guy, Ben Mehic. He represents Wiz of Awes, which is a fan-sided blog site hosted by Sports Illustrated, critically acclaimed. These guys do excellent work covering the Washington Wizards. Ben, thanks for joining us this week here on The Baseline.
Thank you so much for having me, man. As the Positive Pixels guy, I find it weird to sit here and talk about the putrid Washington Wizards, but I'll do my best to give my unofficial analysis.
Well, that's what we want to do, is we actually want to analyze the state of the Washington Wizards. I mean, this is a team last year, and really over the last couple of seasons, we have kind of seen this team kind of come to fruition. And the emergence of John Wall, who at one point we were questioning whether or not he was deserved to be named as a franchise type of player. Once he came off of his injury, he really showed us, what his talents and what his skill set could truly do for a team like this Washington Wizards team, which has obviously struggled to make themselves, one of those viable, relevant teams over the years. Since Flip Saunders has left, and since they had Gilbert Arenas, Agent Zero, and those guys, and Antoine Jameson, that little trifecta they had going. So I just want to get your perspective, Ben, on what we're seeing now from this Washington Wizards team. Why does it seem like this team struggles so mightily at the start of seasons before they start rounding into form to look like a team that should be making these type of playoff runs that they've been making the last couple of seasons?
Well, Cal, if I knew the answer to that question, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in the front office. I don't think anyone knows what's going on with the team. They look disengaged. They honestly look like a team who wants the coach to get fired. John Wall in particular, I have no idea what's going on with him. He's not playing engaged basketball. He's struggling. He's shooting just 30% from the three. He's shooting 39% from the field. He's forcing the issue. Last night he shot 6 for 25, and that was right before the game winner. And I mean, there's been times this season where I look forward to Ramon Sessions, and he's only making like 3% of his layups, and that's another unofficial stat from me. So, I mean, when you're looking forward to the backup point guard playing, there's a serious issue there, and I don't think there's anyone on the team per se who knows what's going on with him, including John Wall.
When you look at that situation, because Wall has pretty much career lows and everything right now, even dating back to his rookie year, which I found very, very disturbing. Is it really something that is about, from your perspective, is it about the scheme that the coach has in place right now that they're just no longer buying into? Or is it something, because when things like this happen to an elite player like Wall, people start thinking, okay, well, maybe he's injured and he's not disclosing it. What do you think is your best guess that's happening with Wall in that situation?
I mean, I've heard a lot of people blame the increased pace, but if you look at the formation of the roster, they built it knowing that they're going to play at a faster pace, rather. But I really don't think that's the issue. I just think that the players aren't committed right now. And I really don't know how they can change that right now. It's just a mindset. They're complaining. They're pouting on the court. They're not playing with effort. So right now, it's really just I don't think it's a physical thing. I think it's mental.
Ben Mehic joining us here. He writes for Wiz of Awes. Be sure to check out the website, www.wizofawes.com. And, Ben, it's weird to me because when you look at what this team completely has, you have John Wall, you have Bradley Beal, you have Nene, you have Gortat, and I get it. At first glance, this is not a NBA Finals caliber team, but you would think that this team grows into a NBA Finals type caliber team, especially if they've reached to the second round of the playoffs. Each of the first 2 years of this run of them. And now you look at this team, you really start wondering, are the pieces truly fitting in place to be able to round into form? And we've seen last year, and we don't want to use the measuring stick of everything being about the Golden State Warriors, but you have to appreciate the fact that, that's a team that's been together a couple of years. They've made a couple of Cinderella runs, and you can somewhat mirror where the Washington Wizards have had that have made that kind of run. They've made themselves relevant, and even during the regular season last year, this was a team ultimately that should outright just win the Southeastern Division, dominate that division. And now where divisions are no longer that relevant, you really have to gauge on their playoff success. And when you look at this team, what do you think is going to be the key? Because it can't completely be on John Wall to do everything for this team. There has to be accountability across the board for some of these other players, these guys that they've signed to these free agent contracts, to really step up and make this team better than what they've been showing in the first half of the season.
The problem is the guys they did sign aren't locker room leaders. I mean, in the past, when they made their first run, they had guys like Al Harrington who weren't really effective on the court, but in the locker room would step up and be the locker room voices. Last year, obviously, they have Paul Pierce. Coming into the season, I thought Otto Porter would step in and fill his role on the court, and he has done a solid job doing that, but they don't have a Paul Pierce in the locker room anymore. And I expected John Wall and Bradley Beal to step up and take the locker room as their own, but right now, obviously, they're underperforming as leaders, and there's no one in that locker room who has the voice of a Paul Pierce. And John Wall doesn't have that right now, which is strange. He's in his 6th season. He's 25 years old. You'd expect him to take this team as his own, but right now he's failing to do that. Bradley Beal is still too young. He's 22 years old, and they don't have that locker room leader right now. Perhaps they'll make a trade. I don't know. I don't think it's they're capable of getting a guy like Paul Pierce. And that loss, that departure has really hurt them right now, and I think we're seeing it right now.
So you don't think a guy like, I don't know, maybe even Jared Dudley, and I mean, obviously he doesn't have the pedigree of Paul Pierce per se, but in terms of what he's supposed to bring from a personality standpoint and the locker room, and even a guy like Gary Neal, who's been on the Spurs and things like that, you don't think those two guys were, I guess, brought in on purpose to try to help in that locker room presence that Paul Pierce left?
They don't have that. They don't have that championship experience. And I mean, these are human beings, man. You can look at a guy like Jared Dudley, and he's a great locker room guy for a team that hasn't experienced success, like the Milwaukee Bucks, for instance, last year. But you need a guy like Paul Pierce with championship experience who will look you in the eye and tell you that you're doing something wrong. Jared Dudley isn't that guy. And as a human being, if you're a superstar like John Wall and Gary Neal comes up to you and says, he points out your flaw, I don't see how that'll resonate with someone like John Wall.
Ben Mehic joining us here, writes for the Wiz of Awes. Be sure to check out the Twitter handle for the blog at Wiz of Awes. Ben, we talk a lot about John Wall, but let's also talk about his partner in crime, so to speak, and Bradley Beal. And, it's interesting, there had always been that perception that minus Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, this could very well be, the second best backcourt in the future, as far as the future of the NBA goes. And I'm starting to wonder if whether or not, their chemistry, their symmetry is good enough to do what's necessary to kind of help reform this team, to get them back on track. And look, the talent of Bradley Beal is there, but also the fact that he cannot stay healthy on the basketball court for the life of him really now becomes an issue. And I just wonder how you think that that's affecting the play of John Wall. Does he lean and depend more on Bradley Beal's playmaking ability for this Wizards team to come out of the funk? In other words, does he not trust the rest of the guys that are on the ball court more than he would trust Bradley Beal because of that perception of them being such a great duo combination on the backcourt?
I don't think it's a matter of trust. John is probably one of the most unselfish players in the league, and he does a great job of setting his teammates up. And Bradley's probably the only bright spot they've had this year. He hasn't taken the serious leap we thought he would, but he's playing at an all-star level right now. He's making big shots. He's hitting a huge percentage of his three-point shots. But I don't know. I can't really comment on their chemistry. I don't know them personally, but they don't have a chemistry of someone like a LeBron James and a Dwayne Wade did. And I don't know their relationship off the court, but I mean, they seem to have a solid relationship on the court. It's not working right now. They're not really vibing off each other right now. I don't know if that'll change in the future. Obviously, Randy Whitman needs them both to step up. Bradley has done a solid job. Last night, I think he took like 10 shots or 9 shots, and he scored 20 points, and John took 25 and scored like 18, I think. Bradley needs to take matters into his own hands more. It would be nice to see him get more shots. And I don't know if Randy Whitman will do anything to change that in the future, but yeah.
Well, it seems to be like, you're saying that there's a lot of things going on with this roster, both offensively and defensively. But where do you think they can turn it around the easiest? I mean, because defense seems to be a lot of times just a matter of effort per se. So do you think that's where things can at least turn around for them quickest, in terms of making a more concerted effort to, getting back to winning basketball?
For them to improve defensively, they have to change the entire rotation. I mean, Gortat, after last night's loss, openly talked about wanting Nene back in the starting lineup. But again, Nene is hurt more often than not, and making that change would be awful right now. They added like 5 or 6 guys this offseason to play small ball and to revert and start Nene and play Drew Gooden more and Chris Humphries and DeJuan Blair. That would be a total disaster. So I don't think that's even an option. I think the defense is what it is. They banked on becoming an elite offensive club, but right now they're in the bottom half of the league in offensive efficiency. So there's really not an answer. They just have to keep at it, keep playing with more energy, and this might end up being a lost season.
After looking at what we're seeing from these few weeks, you really believe that that's where it might actually get to? Because we still have belief in the fact that the Eastern Conference, while clearly wasn't on the level of what the Western Conference was last year, so to speak, that one of the Washington Wizards teams is part of the reason why we actually talk about how the Eastern Conference is now getting better and is actually becoming more competitive to not just the Western Conference team, but amongst themselves. But with this kind of drop off, and we were talking about in the preseason how this Washington Wizards team should be a top 5 team. You don't see that from this team. And obviously if they trend towards this way, that would be pretty glaringly obvious, Ben. But what you're saying is that this team truly is not built to be what we consider as a top 5 team in the playoff picture at this moment in time, structured. But you think gameplay-wise, if they figured it out, that they could very well possibly be? In other words, the drop-off is not that great for them.
Well, right now they're 12th in the East. You got teams like the Pistons, Knicks, Pacers, Celtics, Hornets, Magic. They've all made improvements, and the Bucks and the Wizards are the only teams in the East that have made drastic drop-offs. And I mean, I really don't see how things change. The roster is flawed. Ernie Grunfeld did an awful job at constructing it. During the offseason, we all praised him for adding shooters for veteran minimum deals on one-year deals, but right now it's obviously not working. Not surprisingly enough, I mean, the guys on one-year deals are the only ones playing with effort. Gary Neal's playing well, Jared Dudley's playing well, Ramon Sessions is playing well, and you got guys like John Wall, Marcin Gortat who have long-term deals who aren't playing with effort. So, I mean, the roster construction is flawed, and I don't see how that changes unless they make trades. And at this point, making trades after 14 games into the season, that could be disastrous as well.
Well, let's have a little fun here. Put on your general manager hat for a second, and where would you want to see this team potentially make the biggest splash or move per se? Because obviously this is a big year for them, and wanting to retain Bradley Beal, potentially bring KD, and we're not going to get into all of that. But if there was a package of players that you could see, potentially shipped out of the Washington Wizards organization right now, give me one or two names that you think could probably go.
See, that's an issue as well because they don't have any movable pieces. I don't see any teams calling up and asking for DeJuan Blair. Unless they want to give up someone like Kelly Oubre or give up a future first-round pick, I could see them trying to go after someone like Ryan Anderson, who's also on an expiring contract, and obviously the Pelicans have struggled this year. But they don't have the pieces to complete a trade. Ernie Grunfeld is the type of general manager to make a panic move, but I just don't see them moving a player like a Bradley Beal or an Otto Porter, or even a Kelly Oubre. So I don't see where they can make a major change. But they are looking to obtain an injured player exception for Martell Webster, who's been out for like the past decade. And if you're banking on a 16th man, like a Christopher Douglas Roberts, for instance, you're probably in some big trouble. So I don't see how they make a major move. They're probably stuck with what they have unless they get the injured player exception and sign a free agent. But I don't see how any of that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine the Washington Wizards moving mountains to molehills to get CDR off the books. Ben Mehic joining us here from Wiz of Awes, writes for the blog and does excellent work. And one of the things, Ben, that I think is indicative of a team that is obviously struggling is their ability to play up against, the better competition. Now, the Indiana Wizards, clearly they dropped off. A part of that reason last year was because of the fact that they didn't have, their superstar player in Paul George. And now this year, it just seems like with this Washington Wizards team, they just have a hard time stopping the superstar player. In your mind, and I know Shaw had asked about this, which is the easiest aspect to improve upon, but right now, for you, the fix that's necessary for this Washington Wizards team? Is it definitely more of the offensive flow, or is it just really about the productivity of John Wall?
I think that's number one. When you're banking on your franchise player and he's shooting 39% from the field, less than 30% from three, he's averaging more turnovers than he did during his rookie season. I don't know if you guys remember John Wall during his rookie season, but he wasn't a good basketball player. He would play at one speed, turn the ball over more than any other player in the league, and he's averaging more turnovers than he did during his first year in the league. So that's an issue. When your best player's having the worst season of his career, you're probably going to have some troubles. And I don't see an easy fix. I mean, defensively, they just don't have the pieces. They don't have a Trevor Ariza. Even last year when they played big, they were still a good defensive club. Teams would struggle to finish inside with Nene and Marcin Gortat on the court. And Paul Pierce, as old as he is, he still played solid defense. You had guys like Rasul Butler who would come in and give you something. Guys like Chris Humphries, who played his natural 4 or 5 position and wasn't shooting 3-point shots, would come in and give you something. But this year, they're all over the place. They don't have an elite defender. They're really missing a guy like Trevor Ariza right now. Allen Anderson hasn't even stepped on the court for him this year. So defensively, I don't see how they get better unless they start playing big again. And if they revert back to that, it'll be a disaster.
So how long do you give this team to, in essence, turn it around before we start to hearing the rumors or maybe even the eventual firing of Randy Whitman? I mean, are you on board with that situation? Because his name has been brought up, to be let go previously. But do you think that's a situation that we can see that Whitman gets let go before maybe, say, All-Star break?
Well, last year I spoke to someone close to the Wizards, and that was after All-Star break, and Whitman was on the hot seat when they dropped games to the Sixers, to the Wolves, and they haven't been losing to bad clubs right now. last night they lost on a buzzer beater, and they did beat the San Antonio Spurs. So I think it's too early. And if there's any team in the league that's too patient, it's the Wizards. I mean, Whitman's on a 1-year deal, so you might just have him ride out the season. And I mean, is there anyone in the coaching market right now that could save them? Do you hire a guy like Mike D'Antoni and to implement an entire another system? Do you have assistant coach Don Newman, who's coached under Greg Popovich, come in and coach the club? Ernie Grunfeld's also on an expiring contract, their general manager. So I believe they'll probably just let him ride out the season. I would be shocked if they miss the playoffs. They'll probably finish like 8th or 7th if they continue on this road. They'll finish like 500 and probably get bounced out by the Cavaliers like they did in the mid-2000s.
He is the man, and he rolls with the Washington Wizards, covering them quite nicely, I would say, and you definitely want to check him out. He is Ben Mehic, and catch him on Twitter at Ben Mehic NBA. They do their thing at Wiz of Awes, Fansided, Sports Illustrated, critically acclaimed. These guys do excellent work keeping their finger on the pulse of the Washington Wizards, so be sure to check them out, www.wizofawes.com. Also catch them on the Twitter. They're constantly tweeting out great stuff about the Wiz at Wiz of Awes. Ben, we really appreciate you helping us break down the state of the Washington Wizards, man, and we look forward to bringing you back on soon, man.
Thank you so much for having me, man. And I'll do my best to continue creating positive pixels on the site. It's been rough, man, but hopefully the team turns it around, and I wish you guys nothing but the best.
All right, awesome. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, The Baseline NBA podcast, and a couple of great topics here that we've got for you guys in our segment of The Drop. And well, the first one obviously is the one that's been, roaming around on Twitter and all of the major social media patterns, is regarding the situation that's happened with center for the Philadelphia 76ers, Jalil Okafor, and his knocking out a fan. And, Shaw, this ain't the malice in the palace, but I think we knew from jump that Okafor was clearly not happy of being a Philadelphia 76er. I think that was pretty evident at draft night when he had the pictures of him pulling up the jersey, and then, he just basically threw it down after it was done. And for the most part, he's put on a good show. He's put on a good corporate face, so to speak. Hey, I'm getting paid by the Sixers. I'm the #1 draft pick. I'm putting up the best numbers, against any of these other players on the team. Also, playing marketably better than expected, and I think more than your boy Nerlens Noel. And we're sitting here saying, this hasn't translated to wins, and I think that is now finally spilled out over where a fan now is being caught as a casualty of the calamity there, the damage. And when you think about this, man, this is finally, I think, Okafor kind of showing his face. He does not want to be in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably the overarching theme with Okafor and what's going on with Philadelphia 76ers. But even the reason why I wanted to kind of discuss this is because I sent out a tweet saying that, listen, this is all on Okafor. When you engage or physically have a physical altercation with somebody else, that's a self-control issue. But it was allegedly prodded by fans taunting him outside of a club and saying, "Oh, Philly sucks. You're never going to win a game," et cetera, et cetera. And all that. I was like, you can kind of connect that to what Philly has going on in general. A lot of people have said, it's been widely reported how the losing has affected the players. And then when you talk to other guys with friends on the Philadelphia 76ers, like, yeah, my guy is going through a rough time right now. I think that is kind of what we're trying to bring into the discussion. Not to say that Okafor punching a fan is Philadelphia 76ers' fault, but it definitely contributed to the overarching, I think, issues that Okafor may be dealing with this team and wanting to be a part of this organization. And one of my guys on Twitter, he didn't agree with me. He's like, Philly, the 76ers have nothing to do with this. This is on Okafor. And again, I agree. Okafor is responsible for his own actions per se. But it's kind of hard for me not to think that the Philadelphia 76ers organizations, their culture right now is contributing to the mindset and some of the, even if you will, depression and anger that a lot of these players are facing.
Yeah, listen, there's also been reports by ESPN apparently that this has not been the first time that Okafor has had to deal with altercations with hecklers. And I get it. It's on us. It's on you, the person, you, the athlete, to maintain a level of self-control. But we've seen all too often where fans they toe that line. They really kind of cross the boundaries. My problem with this whole situation with reference to Jalil Okafor is the fact that I think part of this is he should have just been upfront with where he is with this. But clearly, he doesn't want to be made out to be the bad guy. Clearly, he doesn't. But I think that in some instances, he could kind of flip it and put the pressure back on Philly's management. Right now, it's just a perception of, hey, you're the number one player. You're supposed to help take us to the promised land. You're supposed to be that dude. That's why we talked about you when you came out of Duke. And then that's why everybody is really putting it on you. You're in essence what Joel Embiid was supposed to be and what Nerlens Noel was supposed to be. But clearly, it's to deter from the fact that he is undoubtedly supposed to be the best player out of this year's draft. And I think with that and that attachment that comes with it, unfortunately, is that the perception is you have to be the person to kind of shoulder this team and make this team better. Unfortunately, because Jalil Okafor has not speak up and say anything about where he is, not just with this team, but what it is that he sees, that he doesn't put himself in a better situation now when situations like this go down. And now it makes him look out to be one of those young, clearly uncontrollable athletes that, loses his cool just because he can't handle a little heckling and stuff. And then when you see a report like what's been reported by ESPN saying that this has not been the first time, and even in one of those situations, a gun was being pointed at him by one of those hecklers and stuff like that. To me, it shows an extremity, one, of the fans, and two, I think, where it's now getting to a guy like Okafor, which is, it's just rightfully so. The kid is only 20-something years old, so it's not like, he's been in the league for 10, 15 years and has to live the life of LeBron James. But I think at some particular point, something has got to give. And if management is not going to step up and do something to protect their players, the players need to protect themselves. This is why you have a union. And also, this is why, as a player, you need to know how to manipulate the media, put the pressure back on management to do right by their superstar players.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's 20 years old, and yeah, there's a lot of expectations on him to succeed and be one of the better players out of this year's draft. That's clear. That's for certain. But the 76ers don't have anybody over 25 on this club. To their pseudo credit, if you will, when they've acquired veteran guys, like I think they acquired Jared Wallace and I think they acquired Jason Thompson over the summer, they redistributed those guys and let them go somewhere else because they didn't want those veteran guys to be part of this losing culture and situation. But those are guys potentially, I mean, maybe not so much Jason Thompson, but maybe who could have helped them in the locker room and gotten the ear of some of these people. So that's another issue that you have with Philadelphia, where they were trying to help those veterans out. They should have been trying to help themselves out to some degree, and trying to have somebody to get in the ear of some of these players. On the other flip side of it too is that, listen, you're listening to Okafor, he's going out, having a gun pulled on you for the most part is never your fault. I don't know what that situation was, and there's not a whole lot of reports, regarding that. Just saying that incident happened. Don't know what the cause of it was, but I think the other issue is that maybe he shouldn't be going out so much. But the flip side to that is, well, maybe they're going out so much because they're losing and they're trying to find a ways to drown their sorrows, if you will. And I'm not saying that they're drinking or whatever, but they're just trying to get out, find a way to be distracted from the losing that's on the basketball court. And again, you can have an opinion on that, saying that that's not the right way. You need to be focused 100% of the time, and I don't even think that's realistic. One way or the other, though, Philadelphia has to get a handle on this situation with Jalil Okafor. There was a speeding incident now that's being reported as well, and his favorite player is Tim Duncan. And, these are things that Tim Duncan would never, ever have going on in his career. That said, Tim Duncan also never had to be part of a losing organization like the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And right now, as it stands, we're awaiting if whether or not disciplinary action is going to be taken by the league on Okafor's altercation. And also now when you add on top of the fact that, he may be also involved in a speeding incident as well, too, he could actually add on to the propensity of possible suspension. I mean, definitely a fine probably is going to wind up coming out of it. And this is one of the first challenges that Adam Silver is going to have with this budding superstar talent that's now emerging for the league. How do you handle these guys? And, do you do them with kid gloves, or you use or set an example for how they really should be handling themselves? Again, these guys are ambassadors and the face of the NBA, quote unquote, the new NBA. So we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and move things forward, Shaw. And let's talk a little bit about the new. Let's go a little bit about the old, man. One person that we know never had an issue with being able to handle trifling fans and, in an atmosphere of losing our boy Dirk Nowitzki, the German sharpshooter, what a year this guy is having. I mean, you can make the argument that he is, the mid-30 is the new 20 for Dirk Nowitzki. This guy is single-handedly, I think, in their own way, has really revitalized the hopes and the spirits of Dallas Mavericks fans and their ability to see this team put themselves right back in the playoff picture if he continues to play the way that he's been playing so far in a little close to the first quarter of the season. Shaw, what has impressed you so much about what Dirk Nowitzki is doing on this basketball court? And why does he make it seem so seamless right now at this age in his career?
Just what an amazing professional this guy is, and what an amazing career he's had overall. He's not blowing the numbers away per se, but in terms of where you would expect him to be at this stage of his career at 37 years old, and you contrast that to other guys in the league his age, Kobe, Paul Pierce, things like that. What Dirk is doing right now from an efficiency level is really amazing, and you really feel like he's taken what happened to Dallas over the summer and not getting the free agents that they wanted per se in DeAndre Jordan, and then having to kind of retool. He's really taken it as a personal mission to not let the Mavericks fail this year, and they're above 500, playing great basketball. I mean, they struggled a little bit in recent weeks, but Dirk is leading the league in three-point shooting as we speak right now at 50% from the three-point line, shooting not a career high, but shooting his highest field goal percentage at 52% since God knows when, and it's still averaging 17 points per game. His rebounding is up from a season ago as well. Just doing so much well right now for the Dallas Mavericks, and you can tell that he's taken it as a personal mission to make sure the Mavericks are not going to be forgotten in the Western Conference.
And what I love most about what Dirk Nowitzki is doing is he is establishing himself to get the shots that he needs, and he's positioning players. It's interesting. We often talk about how Dirk Nowitzki couldn't thrive without a Steve Nash type of player, and I feel like in maybe some ways he's kind of helped made Darren Williams somewhat of a reborn player. While there's still expectations of Darren Williams to pony up on being the player that captured $100 million from the Brooklyn Nets and being the player that he used to be with the Utah Jazz, I think he truly understands what kind of player Darren Williams is, and kind of like wiping out all of the negativity and stuff like that, kind of taking him under the shoulder and saying, listen, you feed me the ball where I need it, and I will get the shot. I will get that shot. I will make that shot. And sometimes it's hard for a guard who comes in off of the type of situation, the tumultuous situation that Darren Williams has had, to have a player that he can entrust in and he can lean on to kind of revitalize his career. He has a propensity to give the ball with trust, to even have the confidence to shoot the basketball because the veteran player wants you to shoot the ball. I think I start seeing that in a guy like Dirk Nowitzki having an infectious ability to bring Darren Williams back to the NBA, so to speak, which is what we've wanted for the longest time. We talked about how he used to be a top 5 point guard in the league, and we haven't seen that in 4 or 5 years. And now I think next to a veteran player, a quality shot maker like Dirk Nowitzki, we're kind of seeing that now a little bit piece by piece. It's not jumping out at everybody. It's not happening on a night in, night out basis, but I think it's happening enough where we're talking about how the Dallas Mavericks are a relevant team again.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Dirk is the catalyst of that, and Darren Williams has played great basketball for them. Zaza Pachulia has played very great basketball for them, and all this while some of their guys are battling back from injuries, and Wesley Matthews and Chandler Parsons. So a lot of this is a credit to Rick Carlisle, the coach, as well as Dirk Nowitzki for how he captains the team, if you will. But Carlisle too for the strings that he's pulling on the sidelines. They've gotten Raymond Felton to play good basketball again as well right now. They still have Devin Harris coming off the bench and inspiring play. JJ Barea is playing great for them. So Carlisle has really gotten this team to really buy into what he's selling, if you will. And then again, I think they really galvanized each other by looking at what they could have been from a roster standpoint over the summer and understanding where they were and how they're going to make that work in this current situation. And again, it all starts with Dirk and his super efficient start to the season.
Dirk Nowitzki averaging 17.7 rebounds per game. Player efficiency, though, 22.28. The guy is just balling out of his mind and is helping this Dallas Mavericks team become a viable and deadly team to deal with in the Western Conference. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this is our segment of The Drop. And finally, Shaw, in our segment of The Drop, man, another topic that I thought was really good for us to kind of throw out there for all of our early season listeners. Look, man, anybody who's going to tell me that this league is not in good hands, that that when we start seeing the breakdown of LeBron James suffering through certain injuries, I know that we saw a great season last year with James Harden, Steph Curry, and those boys putting in work. I love the balance of when we see the older players kind of reestablish themselves, the Dwayne Wades, the Dirk Nowitzkis of the league. And then guys who have, redeemed themselves after serious injuries like a Chris Bosh and like a Paul George. I mean, it's just great storylines that are coming in from all places. But you have kind of touched on a few surprising statistics, so to speak, that from players that we weren't expecting to have an impact in those particular categories like they've done. Guys like Kristaps Porzingis, who, listen, next to what Jalil Okafor is doing, we can make a serious argument that Kristaps Porzingis, it could be the front runner for Rookie of the Year right now, just looking at what he's been able to do with this New York Knicks team, even with a supposedly healthy Carmelo Anthony. There's some players that are doing in some really fabulous things at the early outset of this season, Shaw.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start with, obviously you want to touch on Porzingis, but I want to start with in the points category. Now, listen, 13th in the league in scoring, maybe you don't think it's a big deal. But I'm looking at Kawhi Leonard right now, and the questions about where would he be able to be an elite scorer and be a guy who could carry his organization or carry his team. And Kawhi Leonard's averaging 22 points per game right now. He's a 20-point per game scorer in the NBA. And yes, we saw that type of play in the finals and things like that, but everyone was concerned about whether or not he would be able to be that type of player throughout the course of a regular season. And to date, he's done that. And I remember even we discussed on our fantasy show with Kyle a couple weeks ago that he was like, listen, I'm not sold on Kawhi Leonard. And I kind of agree, Kawhi Leonard, and I kind of agreed. It's like, he does some nice things, but I don't think the scoring and those things are going to be there. And it's been there. So, kudos to Kawhi Leonard and what he's been able to do. And then even to the Spurs organization, we look at a guy like Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, who they're yielding the organization to him, saying, listen, we know he's the future here, and they're kind of letting him go. But then you want to talk about Kristaps Porzingis. Listen, this guy, he's becoming an overnight sensation in everything he's been able to do. Go ahead. I know you want to jump in.
No. I was gonna say, man, you gotta give him the soul snaps. Soul snaps. When Kristaps is doing his thing, baby, you got to give him soul snaps, man, because that guy, man, he puts rhythm in basketball again for the 7-3 guys. And I love it. It's just beautiful stuff to watch, man. And of course, I'm going to pat myself on the shoulder because I was the one who continually kept saying, don't sleep on this guy. You can't teach 7-3. This kid is hungry. This kid wants to make a name for himself in the league. Reminds me a little bit like the guy we just talked about a little while ago in Dirk Nowitzki. This guy wants to be that and more. And New York Knicks fans should be very, very fortunate that they have a president of basketball operations in a Phil Jackson to kind of see the type of talent that this kid could actually possess. And he has the moxie to motivate him to show that type of greatness. I mean, calling a guy out, making him out like Sean Bradley and everything like that. We just thought, listen, this is Phil Jackson who knew that it was going to help translate to help this kid actually step up and embrace the fan base of New York City, and all at the same time make this New York Knicks team look like a competitive Knicks team that could actually do something as long as, as they continue to round out through the course of the season.
Yeah, man. I mean, so you're looking at 9.1 rebounds per game, good for 17th in the league. He's also averaging 1.9 blocks per game, good for 9th in the league. And that to me, just, even with the blocks, because you just figure, yeah, he's 7'3", but, maybe he's not going to have the discipline, to block shots or whatever the case may be. And he's come out and he's done it right away. So kudos to Kristaps Porzingis and what he's been able to do thus far, for the New York Knicks organization. And they've had a semi-resurgence, if you will. They're not all the way back per se. But, like I said, I think Kristaps has a lot to do with what they have going on there. Staying in the rebounding category too, Tristan Thompson, listen, look what was supposed to happen with that organization, and didn't know if he was going to even be on the team to begin the season coming into training camp. There's been a couple injuries here and there, as we would expect with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Mozgov missed some time. But Tristan Thompson has come in here and is averaging 10.3 rebounds a game, good for 9th in the league. Listen, I just didn't see that coming. Obviously, we know he's a glass eater per se, but given the situation and the bodies that were supposed to be in front of him in Cleveland, I'm very, very surprised at his output from the rebounding standpoint thus far in the league. And I'm very curious to see if he'll be able to keep it up. Jared Sullinger's another guy who's having a great year in the rebounding category as well. Just looking across the stats, when you go to assists, Did you know that Ish Smith, the guy who was signed to the New Orleans Pelicans, basically the day the season started, is 5th in the league in assists right now at 8.1 dimes per game.
No
8.1.
Ish. No Ish.
It's
holy
that's
Ish.
Absurd.
Stop
absurd.
That Ish.
I just, again, I have to give the guy some credit there and saying this category. Draymond
But you've seen
Green,
him. He wreaks havoc on the basketball court, man. He's really taking advantage of the time that's been given to him, out in New Orleans. And listen, more importantly, it gives an option for Alvin Gentry. He loves knowing that he's got guards that, have a little speed, have a little quickness to him, have a little havoc to him. He loves that.
I mean, I can't say any more about the guy. He's played so great for them, and the offense has really looked better. Although they've lost whatever it is, 14 games already. The offense has looked better with him running it as opposed to Drew Holiday, who just is not all the way back right now. But if you would have told me Ish Smith is leading John Wall in assists to begin the NBA season, I just would have told you to go fall off, jump off a cliff. There's no way I would have seen that coming. But another guy in the assist category, Draymond Green. Listen, we know he can pass the basketball, but at 7.1 assists per game, he's 9th in the league currently, ahead of guys like LeBron James, Alfred Payton, Mike Conley, even Jeff Teague. Draymond Green is doing everything, and I mean everything, because he's scoring. He's almost, he's averaging 13.
Better than Marc Gasol too.
Yeah, 8.1, 7.1. Nearly borderline triple-double-ish numbers right now from Draymond Green, and at 7.1 assists per game in that offense. Yes, which I know it's easy to get assists, but from your power forward, that's saying a lot. So those are some of the early surprises I have out there, man. I'm sure there's some more out there that we didn't really get to touch on, but I mean, I think some of these numbers are astounding.
Yeah, man, it's just awesome stuff when you see that some of these guys may be considered no-name players, could be considered role players, so to speak. These guys are stepping up, and they're really helping to solidify why the statistics are so important. You look at the analytics and you look at what these guys are doing to help their teams win basketball games. This is exactly why some of these teams have markedly improved over the course since last season. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop. Time now to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. That's right.
All right, Shaw. Earlier this week, the Los Angeles Clippers had a players-only meeting. I think we have heard this time and time again when a team is just sucking up the joint that they have to have that quote-unquote players-only meeting. Has this helped the Los Angeles Clippers any? And do you think it's even necessary given the fact that they got Doc Rivers on this team to get this team back in order?
Well, I mean, I think it's helped them in the short term, but you never want to have such drastic things happening to you at the beginning of the season. Seems that some of the parts aren't really fitting together right now, and there was a report last week that Josh Smith could be heard screaming at the team and yelling, and all kinds of stuff was going on in that locker room. Doc Rivers needs to get it under control, but this is the hand he dealt himself, if you will. So he really has to be the one to quash all the problems that the Clippers have to begin this early.
Yeah, I wonder where Paul Pierce was in all of this. He could have easily gotten, had quieter times being back over in Washington. Out in Cleveland, LeBron James, another milestone achievement. He passes Reggie Miller for 18th on the all-time scoring list. I'm wondering what Reggie Miller is probably thinking when that happened.
Well, Reggie Miller can't put up the choke symbol on that, because LeBron is definitely doing his thing. And like we've said here, we've been saying this, I think, for a while now, especially this season, in the latter part of last season. We seem to be seeing guys pass records and milestones almost every other week right now when it comes to LeBron, even Kobe, Dirk Nowitzki, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett. These guys continue to just, ascend the charts, per se, in the various categories. And, kudos to LeBron James for consistency, all-time scoring list. Who knows where he's going to finish, but I don't think we're going to see him stop outside the top.
It's a great time to be an NBA superstar, especially if you are LeBron James. Shaw, out in Los Angeles again. Our boy, Jay Crossover, Jamal Crawford, joins the NBA as one of the best top 100 scorers.
I had no idea. I mean, I challenge people out there if they knew that. I was watching the game, ironically, and then I just said, congratulations to Jamal Crawford. He's now one of the NBA. I was like, really? You know what I mean? Just what? And I had to look it up, and it's true. Jamal Crawford is one of the league's top 100 scorers right now in the NBA of all time. Not this of all time. And kudos to him for a great great career, showing that longevity, being a sixth man, being a starter to begin his career as well. I just think, this is one of those stats that really stuck up on.
Yeah, and look, we may not, I don't know if there'll ever be something where, we put a guy like Jamal Crawford in the NBA Hall of Fame, but I think achieving milestones like this, I think really help to attribute it, because we are in that day and age where we talk about how important the sixth man is for basketball teams. And I think Jamal Crawford's ability, he really, in essence, kind of helped elevate the conversation about how important the sixth man is. And I think that that's something that should really be taken into consideration. But the fact that he is now one of the 100 best scorers in the NBA, given the role that he's had over the course of his career, is just truly been remarkable. Finally, Shaw, out in Portland, Meyers Leonard. We talked about him maybe just like a week ago. Somehow this guy quickly, the hand heals like much faster than maybe we anticipated. He rejoins the Portland Trailblazers coming off of that horrific injury where we were anticipating he was to be gone for several weeks, but clearly he can't be away from his team and wants to be sure that he can contribute to help this Portland Trailblazers team continue their season success.
Yeah, man, I think they had Mr. Miyagi on their training staff or something, rubbing their hands together, and he did something to that shoulder, because there's no way if I suffer in my shoulder, I'm back within a week's time. Kudos to Meyers Leonard and his dedication to his craft and wanting to get back out there for the Portland Trailblazers. Did big things for this guy this season, and he hasn't quite lived up to them, but he's definitely out there trying and giving his all. So I'm very surprised he's back as quick as he is, but I'm sure the Portland Trailblazers and their fans are very excited that he is back.
Now, you know how they bred them boys out there in the Midwest. They can have their ligaments hanging off their shoulders, and they'll still find a way to get back on that basketball court. But again, Meyers Leonard coming off of that injury and still finding a way to get back on that basketball team. I know Damian Lillard is not disappointed in having him out there. Those guys seem to have really good chemistry out there on the basketball court. Shaw, awesome stuff this week, man, as we round out all of the topics happening in the association. Oh, I'm sorry, Shaw. There was one other major topic that I think we still needed to drop for our coast to coast, and why don't you go ahead and fill everybody in on this?
Well, this is a very interesting situation, I think, because I'd love to get some fan opinions on this. The NBA is now considering awarding Luke Walton with the wins that the Golden State Warriors have amassed to begin the early part of the season. Obviously, Walton is the interim coach for Steve Kerr while Steve Kerr recovers from the back injury. But Steve Kerr has been getting all these wins for right now. And, Luke Walton even said, when he's getting technicals, he was going to say, well, listen, Steve Kerr should pay half of those fines, kind of jokingly. But now it becomes a real serious question. You started off the season 18-0, 19-0, 20-0, whatever it is. Should Luke Walton get the credit for these wins that the Golden State Warriors are amassing, even though he's doing it in Steve Kerr's image, if you will. So this is something that I think, I'd love to get some feedback on. I kind of feel like Walton should get the win one way or the other, but especially since Kerr's not coming back to maybe even the All-Star break, I feel like that's a hard time to say that Walton was just an interim coach. He's more than an interim coach. He's coached this team, from the beginning of the season, and it looked like at least the All-Star.
Listen, I completely agree with you. And it's not that, I just think you have to, we have to agree. I just think it just makes sense. You have to take in consideration that there's still strategy involved. There's still game planning involved. There's still, putting the right combination of players on the basketball court. And Luke Walton is responsible for that. He's responsible for the team of coaches to have that team in the position that they're in. I think the magnitude of what the Golden State Warriors are doing is what's kind of putting people on the fence, so to speak, because of what Steve Kerr did last year. Sounds kind of crazy, but if you really think about it, that's what it comes down to. Listen, if we really want to be technical about it, Steve Kerr inherited a team that Mark Jackson helped put in a position to realize their potential about what they're capable of doing, and he just took them to the next level. Do we take the wins that Steve Kerr had occurred from last season simply because this was pretty much Mark Jackson's team and got them to play better defense? No, we don't apply it in that kind of way. But what we are talking about is the X's and O's. And if Luke Walton is out there on the court, providing execution, providing strategy, setting up the plays and the system and the personnel and the rotations that are necessary for them to amass the wins that they're winning, I think that should be credited to Luke Walton. Take nothing away from the fact that at the end of the day, Luke Walton is still going to be an assistant coach. That's what he's been hired as, and that's what he will be. But I think if he wants to go out there to prove to someone that he's capable of being a head coach, you give him those wins. Very similar to what people were saying when Chuck Pagano had with Bruce Arians, because everyone felt that, oh, well, this is still Chuck Pagano's team, even though Bruce Arians was the one who got that team all the way to a 12-4 record and possibly being one of the best teams in the NFL in the AFC. So to me, I think of the same thing with Luke Walton. He deserves those wins. He's coached this team to the level of success that they had at the outset of the season. When Steve Kerr comes back, he can go ahead and help them win another 42 wins, and they can go 82-0, and we can stop talking about which coach is responsible for helping these guys. Ultimately, we're going to say it's just the players, because all of them are brainiacs on the basketball court.
Well, real quick, before we sign off, I think I would challenge people out there to really think about this. If the Golden State Warriors even had one loss, to this standpoint, would this even be an issue? If they weren't undefeated per se going into like the fourth week of the NBA season, I don't know if the NBA would really be looking at the situation this way. I think it has a lot to do with the historical start that Luke Walton's led this team off to, and that's why they're doing it. If they would have even lost one time, I don't even think this is even a conversation. But that's just me being a pessimist.
Of course, you have to be the pessimist, because I'm always the optimist.
100, man.
100, right? Awesome show, man. We'd like to thank our man, Ben Mehic, for joining us here, helping us talk about the Washington Wizards. And, Shaw, this has been a really great time. And, I completely, forgot to say, man, I hope you had a really, really great holidays, weekend and stuff like that, man. Got to eat a lot of turkey and watch some quality basketball.
Well, turkey is overrated, so let's go ahead and put that out there. Hope I haven't offended anybody. I'm just not a big fan of the regular and traditional holiday food. But it did something, had a good time, and it is
jerk chicken.
Oh, Lord,
jerk turkey, jerk turkey. That's...
If you ever had jerk turkey, that'll change your life. I've actually had jerk turkey in my time, and it's pretty damn amazing.
We are changing traditions of the holidays every time we do our show.
100, man. So definitely, but I had a great time. Hope all the fans and listeners did as well. It is about spending time with your families and loved ones out there too. So, the food is, it's a kind, to me, it's an afterthought. It really is about just kind of the social engagement that you have with the people that you care about. So all the fans listening to the Baseline, I hope you had a great one out there. And, we're right in the middle of the holiday season, man. Christmas, all that coming up, New Year's, the whole thing. So make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Not doing 180 miles an hour on the freeways like Jalil Okafor in Philadelphia.
Yeah, just let's not get oaky. Let's not get oaky on the roads. But yeah, we'd like to appreciate it. We'd like to say thank you to everyone continually listening to the Baseline, and we appreciate everyone. We hope everyone had a great holidays. We are back up on it, ready to cover all the stuff happening in the association. And like you said, Christmas time, which is NBA time, some really great games on slate, man. We're hopefully going to be in the midst of the action, giving you great stuff to talk about and also great stuff to cover as well. So for the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.